Okay. Hello and welcome to our LinkedIn Live session. I'm Melissa G. Wilson, and Lynn Miller and I are here today to give you 3 tips for better book creation and 3 tips for better book marketing. So let's get right into it, Lynn. Are you excited today to share this news that we have and get everybody pumped up on creating books
I
and
am.
networking? Great.
I am.
Well, here we are with a little known
No,
fact, so you can take it away.
thank you. So, little known fact is that one of the reasons people fail or have difficulty writing their first book is fear of failure. But there's also the other reason is they don't realize how many steps there are to writing a book. I think that was probably the biggest shock for me, and it kind of took me off guard. And even after you write it, there's so much to do around publishing and marketing it and launching it. So there's a lot of support you need every single little step of the way if you're really going to get it right.
It's so true. And I've been, for the future, creating a list that I'll be able to give to you, but I want to make sure it's as robust as possible. And my line is, I always say there are 100 plus things to do, but it's so important to know that you are part of this, that you can be very smart around how you do everything to make your book a success. And what I found through over 2 decades is that there are certain people that are very similar to what we believe in, which is partner with others, look for, I like to call it the highest quality, lowest cost when it comes to putting money into books. And we've also had the benefit, Lynn, I know, to have people come to the marketing support group that I created 2.5 years ago, going on 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I'll give a little shout out to Hannah, who runs, I'm trying to remember Hannah's last name. She runs Book Award Pro. And she helped the authors in our group realize that you can, even before a book comes out, get awards for it. And in my world, it's just as good as getting a bestseller status. And there are over 10,000 awards given every year. And even that you can have an award for a manuscript before your book comes out. So what do you think about that? I hope that helps you realize just one quick example of what you can do when it comes to creating the very best book and publishing it well and launching it well and marketing and selling it well.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so here's a little gift for everyone. Doesn't require any signups, because we're all about building trust and connection, and that takes time, and we know that. And so it's very much for any author too to give, because I call that the great exchange. When you give, you put yourself in a position to receive. So one of the things that this is all about is mind mapping. For years, I had author workshops that I held, and it was all on outlining. And it really helped to have the picture view of a mind map. And the little tip here that you'll see when you get the mind map is, I found through trial and error that people very much enjoyed when they were creating their outline, which is, these are the bones of your book, so important. I want to say second to me, second only to the title, subtitle, and the book description. Your outline really is so important. And the mind map, the tip here is, I have found that if you're a nonfiction business book author, which is really our audience, not that we don't have fiction books out there too, which we'll talk about in the future. But usually 8 to 10 chapters form a good solid business book. So by having a mind map that doesn't go too far, like 15, 20 chapters, it helps the author rein in on their, I want to say, nervousness and focus, and actually helps them much more organize and develop their book into a solid offering for thought leaders, which is where we focus.
I really wish I'd had this mind map when I did my book, the chapter of my book. I really, even for a chapter, I wish I'd had this mind map, Melissa. It would have made such a huge difference.
Well, now you have it, and I hope people do get it. And I know that it's important. And I know we've got Joanne is saying, so she feels, it's so true to find the steps, because I constantly get people asking, well, what exactly should I do? And you feel like you're out on a limb. You don't know what's coming next, but it helps tremendously. And I do plan to bring back, by the way, outlining sessions, because they're so much fun. And I did boot camps, and I limited them to no more than about 10 people. And it was awesome, because so many people got so much in one day, and then they could move forward. And how about this? Identifying your target audience, Lynn. That's something that you think you might have it, but it is a harder thing to do than you realize, because either you have to look at zeroing in on your audience, going more narrow, or going wider.
It depends on what you want to cover and how important it is for the reader. If you're looking at the reader and you're picturing the reader at a certain stage in their development or in their journey, then you kind of have to go wide so that you can capture what actually they need to be able to do, and then tailor your outline to that. And I think that the audience or the reader could identify themselves quickly, especially in a nonfiction book, if you go wider, and then they feel like they can relate to the stories and the problems.
That's true. And also you triggered something in my brain around not mentioning any books, but there are a whole line of books I would call snarky. And there are people who really like that. And then there are people who don't like that. So it's good to understand not just the demographics of your audience, but the psychographics. And it is very, very powerful to go through this step and figure that out. And we come to a subject that Lynn and I was going to say favorite subject, research. And I was just in the library yesterday, and I saw a book that talks about research and sources. And I thought it was interesting that one of the sources they gave was Wikipedia, because it is democratized, and there are all these people who come in and are real zealots around getting research that is accurate. So I thought, oh, that's an interesting tip to take and look and explore. And what I also found is that if you spend time on research, it really fits, of course, for thought leaders, that it pays off tenfold. So interviews with other thought leaders. And another tip is, do use Google Alerts, because you can get alerts then regularly, either daily, when it happens, weekly, when the news comes through. And it will give you also the ability to trend spot. and see research evolving that could have a lot of potential for your book. And Lynn, take it away on research on your end.
It is my favorite thing. And what I love is that this actually is the opportunity to figure out how you're going to focus on, what you're going to focus on with your audience, because there are so many perspectives to look into, and you kind of have an opportunity to kind of figure it out. It's a little bit experimental and exploratory. And as I'm reading, especially if we're working with thought leaders, if I'm reading other speeches that they've written or other articles they've contributed to, I really start to notice where they're spending most of their energy in terms of commentary. And it makes writing the book so much easier.
Right. And more crisp, and the concepts that they develop. What I find, and I think it's in our podcast world also, I'm going to give a shout out to Tania Davis, who has a wonderful book, and she's all about servant leadership, but now she's created a guidebook on feedback, and it's a beautiful guidebook. And what she has found over time, she's been on, I think, 7 podcasts in the last couple of weeks. And there are different things that you offer. It's like you get clearer about things, and then you have, we're in a soundbite world. So the more you are researching, getting insights, more and more pops up. And I think you become more eloquent at delivering on anything, on a podcast, when you give a speech. Everybody loves to have those examples, and they get better as you're out there sharing the research that you find. So let's now shift over to 3 tips for success in I want to say, for whatever reason, see, now I'm doing what I just said, the art and science of networking. And I'll give a shout out to Billy Dexter, who, after many, many years, we decided, or I should say he decided, hey, Melissa, let's just co-author a book together. And as far as I know, and it doesn't really mean, that this book is the very best. I think it's one of the best. But we blended, I helped him identify and blend his methodology with mine. And I think I love his line when not his salutation, but his when he says goodbye, he says, and make your net work. And I love it because it's that simple to understand the power of a network. And starting with Seth Godin, I got to be part of his Domino Project Street Team, 2008. And I believe it was 8 books that he brought out. And there were 70 of us. And it definitely was like getting an MBA in networking and marketing. And the group was exceptional. And I had the honor of bringing Seth in to speak at the Business Marketing Association in Chicago, and also for my husband into his association called NAFM for restaurant equipment manufacturers. And I'll tell you, his insights, he truly is considered to be, probably the top marketer around there, but certainly one of them. And I love what he says here. People do not buy goods and services. They buy, drumroll please, relations or relationships, stories, and magic. So I'm all about, all of that. And so what do you think, Lynn, about this quote? I think it drills in what we're focused on constantly.
Well, they buy those stories. Like if we just talk about sharing stories, and stories that are shared in the context of whatever the topic is, magic can happen when you start to share your own stories. And I was thinking, as you were talking about the different, networking networking is a noun and a verb.
Yes, networlding. Yes,
networking. And so networlding is a verb, and the networlding circles are the noun.
Yes.
And so I think that there's so much that people overlook as possibility when they're either doing one or the other and not both.
That's a great insight. And I would definitely agree with you and add, I know that this last week you've been reading a book that I'd come out with. It's at least been a decade, that's more real now and I think useful than ever. And it is 99 cents on Amazon. It's the Nanosecond Networlders, changing lives in an instant forever. It's a fiction piece. It's also a love story, which is an interesting piece of it. But it starts in Segovia. I like to say where the cinnamon winds whip up through the air, and people there take their networking very seriously, and they care about helping each other and building trust and caring relationships. And by moving it out of where we are in the US, I think it gives people more of a global perspective. And if anyone's like me, or I should say, if you're like me, I absolutely love Europe, and I love all the little different communities there. And it really has a lot of merit there, but it also comes back to the US, and it gives you a real expansive view of possibility, which is in the networlding assessment, which is another tool I'm going to give away. That's the way to really move your network forward. And when networlding first came out, I took 1,000 people through the process, partnering with the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. It was magical because we had people coming in from all over the world. So there I did boot camps also, and we had parties at the end, the celebration of the 7 steps of networlding. Note there are only 7 steps. So, but it touched the heart of real connection. And boy, don't we need that now. Like I say, there's a connection crisis.
There sure is. They're still talking about it on TV. And trust,
yes,
trust is a huge value that is important to most people.
Well, no question that trust is, absolutely. And it's the value that everybody wants more of. And it's something to think about. It's the idea, and there are different statements like this. You're the sum total of the 10 people you spend the most time with, or some people say the 5 people. When Malcolm Gladwell wrote The Tipping Point back in 2002, he said that that you can't have any more than 15 really connected relationships in your life at once. And what I discovered through doing all kinds of networking events is that I called it the power of 10. And those are the circles in the book, in the Nanosecond Networlders, that people, that you can form those and imagine having those circles of 10, but you can start a second circle and then go back to, I call it the mothership circle, if you will. And you can grow connection. We can bring it back and we can go forward even bigger. So trust is so important. And I like to say it starts with 1-to-1, and then 1 to a small group, and then 1 to many. But with the internet, we're at 1 to many so often, I think we get confused and disconnected doing it that way. And that's why the support circles, I think, could really bring about a much more rich set of exchanges. And for me, I'll spend my whole life understanding and talking about what I call the exchange. Because if you just connect with somebody once and then everything falls apart after that, that's not really effective networking. That's transactional, and not relational. It's not opportunity expansive. And that's what you want it to be. And you want to have anything being possible. So
I just want to add here, it's so important to start to take a question and ponder it together.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a question person for sure. Yeah.
And you don't know, because if each person interprets the question differently, you don't know what you're going to come up with together.
That's so true. And I know, for me, Mark Schaefer, I put him way up there with Seth Godin. With one F, by the way. I think he is the Mr. Rogers of marketing, kind, wonderful, creates something called the Uprising. And I'm speaking to his Uprising group in September, which is exciting. And I've been to the Uprising. And for all those people who don't know me, I'm incredibly shy and really don't like events like that. And Mark knows that. But if I'm presenting, it's okay. So that's the other thing I wanted to mention about networking. If you're an introvert, it's painful for you to go to networking events. The number one thing I recommended when I spoke to the MIT forum, which were all men, twice I did it, and the biggest thing they took away was you could get a sidekick to go with you, your wing woman or your wingman. And I just find that fascinating, because what it made me realize is that there are more people frightened of networking than one can believe. And I'll be the first one to raise my hand. If I'm not running a networking event, I'm not happy, and I really don't want to be there. So if you're like that, my heart goes out to you. And I can tell you that with networking, it doesn't happen. Not the events I used to hold. And hopefully other people will hold again. So we're moving on here. Number 3. So in order to engage more deeply, and this is where we're going, the exchange, which is what networking is all about. And in the guidebook, there are 7 levels of support, and each one comes with questions that you can offer to support others. It starts with emotional support, goes up to transformational opportunities, out through community. Like Mark Schaefer says, community's everything now, which I agree, networks, community, etc. And it's the ability to connect deeply, to have an exchange, just like we give trees carbon dioxide, they give us oxygen. And what if it only happened once? We would not have an earth. You have to have constant exchanges. So my tip here is, don't, especially if you have a good experience with somebody, don't end a call without setting up a second call, and the next call, and the next call. And that makes the difference. Like with Billy's very busy, Billy Dexter, he's a partner at Heidrick and Struggles, but we take time to do a podcast every 2 weeks, and we're finishing up our 2nd year. And we have over 30 podcasts so far. It took a lot, but it makes all the difference in the world. So take that tip, run with it. And if you have any questions, you can always connect with me. I'm melissa@networlding.com, or you can go to Networlding and hit the contact page. And for you, Lynn, how do people get a hold of you?
They can email me at lynn@straighttalkwriter.com.
Straight Talk Writer. And Lynn works with me on these shows and research, and we're having a ball. So you may have questions that we can answer, and we're here for you. And here's another QR code in case you didn't get the book yet, 33 Ways Not to Screw Up Writing a Thought Leader book. And I'm moving on this year with over 170 authors that I've helped, and it's where I get my joy from. So if I or we can be of support to you in some way, please reach out. And remember, as Billy would say, actually he says, make the network. And we'll leave you with that.